So yeah, this is Monday, the 3rd of February, 2025. So I'm not too sure what's happening here, but I think price is reacting to the first presented fair value gap. Price had initially ran the highs, so price was running lower to these relatively equal highs slash lows. I marked them. So yeah, price came back, reacted on the first presented fair value gap. It was also time for price to run those relatively equal highs. Basically, when I say it's time for price to run certain places, it's basically when there's a macro. So it's called uh, it doesn't really have a name really, but I just call it a macro. So it's basically from 9:50 to 10:10. It's a 20-minute macro, and yeah, it's very good. It's whereby price runs for liquidity or an inefficiency or gap. So yeah, there was a new week opening gap low, and there was relatively equal high slash lows, and it was time for price to. It was a macro. It was time for price to search for inefficiencies, and we had already showed enough displacement to the downside, and yeah, we were very close to our targets. In order to like win trades most of the time, you have to have those things I just mentioned, and also you need to be at least close to the target. And yeah, so it's not difficult for price to reach there, or it actually gives you more confirmation rather than like price might turn around and stuff, you know. You get more sure that price is gonna run your target. And for my stop loss, if you're wondering how I placed it, I was basically using the third candle of the first presented. So if it's a bullish fair value gap, you want to use the first the candle that formed the candle that's the low, which is the first black candle there, the candle that's in the middle, and the candle that's the third. It's a 1 2 3 formation, so you want to use the middle candle for fair value gap, but for the stop loss I used the third candle, and I used this consequent encouragement of the wick, the halfway point of the wick. So yeah, so this is Tuesday the 4th of February 2025. So this is just a picture of my model in play. So this is my model, it's the same thing, 9:50 to 10:10, the macro. So I didn't end up taking this trade because simply it was just a bit too far. That the time the fair value gap had formed and the time that price reacted to that fair value gap was a bit too. I mean, at the place price had reacted, at the point where price was at, it was a bit too far to the relatively equal highs. So I was just like, okay, I could wait so that I could wait a bit more so that price can just grab the relatively equal highs. Yeah, so basically, I didn't want to enter too soon, even though I had a lot of confluences, because we have a new day opening gap low, which is more confluences, and the relatively equal highs are inside of the new week, I mean, of the new day opening gap, So on Monday's new day opening gap, we have relatively equal highs, and also we have the high of the 10th new week opening gap, and we also have the low of the 8th new week opening gap. So that's a lot of confluences. So you best believe, and also those relatively equal highs, those were old relatively equal highs that were untouched. So that's higher probability. I was going to take this trade initially, but it was just too far from the relatively equal highs in my liking. So I wanted to see price get a bit high, but I didn't end up getting a chance. But that didn't stress me out, because many chances are going to be presented in the marketplace in the future. We're never going to run out of chances. It's every day these things are formed. Like every day, the market will have to run to an inefficiency, liquidity. It'll have to do that every single day at 9:50 to 10:10. Price does that every single day. And there will always be a fair value gap forming there every single day for me to enter off and run those points. Every single day, price does the same thing. It's an algorithm. It's not based on support and resistance. Support and resistance is what is used as those relatively equal highs slash lows. Y'all are in trouble. So right here, this is Wednesday, the 5th of February, 2025. So before the session started, I basically just marked some old high time frame liquidity. Even though it's on the 1 minute, but it's high time frame liquidity. Those are relatively equal highs, and they are very probable. And I wanted to use them for for the day. Bear in mind, these are previous days relatively equal highs, so they're from long ago. Boom. So 10 o'clock US time hits, and I'm in South Africa, so the news were at 5 p.m. So yeah, from the news, price drops low to those relatively equal lows I had marked prior, and they're highly probable since they are in a new week opening gap. So then after that, price respects the consequent encroachment. Wow, is basically the midpoint of a gap, or yeah, it's basically the midpoint of a gap. Yeah. So, or inefficiency. So price respected that, meaning price didn't close on or under it, which is good. It shows weakness. So we understand when price is showing weakness, we understand that it's more likely to push higher or lower depending on the side it's showing weakness to. So if it's showing weakness to the sell side, if it's showing weakness to go lower, then it's gonna go higher. That's an indication to you that price is gonna push higher. So an hour after price had initially left the new week opening gap, price ran higher to those high time frame relatively equal highs, which I marked before the session started. Remember, a few screenshots ago, I showed you relatively equal highs. Those are the relatively equal highs getting taken out, and they got taken out at a specific time. They got taken out at a time whereby price seeks liquidity, and that time is it was 11:50 to 12:10. The macro. We understand at those times price seeks liquidity, and so this would have been another trade I would have taken, but I just wasn't feeling it. No, I'm kidding. Not that I wasn't feeling it. It's just that there wasn't a fair value gap that was just gonna put me in the trade to run those higher time frame relatively equal highs. Yeah, I know. There are fair value gaps that are present, but they are not in the macro time from 9:50. I mean, from 11:50 upwards. I want a fair value gap that forms in that time, not before that time. I don't know. It's just a personal preference. So I'm gonna try and make this quick. So basically, we had a small opening range gap, which means price is gonna move slowly and kind of weirdly. So yeah, the red line is basically the consequent encouragement of a wick that is near relatively equal highs. That's where you could kind of like take partials if you're kind of running for relatively equal highs, and also that's where you can close your trade if you're a person who's not too patient. So yeah, the same thing here. Using my same model, time-based model. So yeah, time hit for price to run those relatively equal highs. Those were relatively equal highs that were from a few days ago. So those are highly probable. So yeah, price ended up running there, but it didn't run there in a nice manner. It wasn't favorable conditions, you see. So yeah, but nonetheless, you can make a stable income from doing this. But yeah, nonetheless, yeah, that's the end of the weekly recap. So yeah, gonna be posting more weekly recaps in the future, and potentially videos like vlogs and stuff. So yeah, peace. yeah, so nonetheless, I actually do these videos for myself and not content purposes. I just do it for record keeping.